Hey guys, welcome to a proper unboxing of my Rolex Datejust 16013, and I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys are true watch lovers, guys, give the video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into this video. So guys, I'm gonna give it to you guys from this angle. This is a proper unboxing angle, and I'm gonna be presenting you guys with my beautiful hands. As you guys can see, this beautiful Rolex vintage outer box. So when it comes to these watches, there are outer boxes and inner boxes. This is the outer box. It's interesting, nice design of a seahorse. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. So the Rolex Datejust is very iconic. A lot of people like to think that the Submariner is, but the Rolex Datejust, if you guys see the Rolex emblem where they have a actual clock, it's the Rolex Datejust with the fluted bezel. And to me, the Rolex Datejust is number one. And here we have the box. Beautiful green Rolex blocks with the gold crown and gold striping. And here we go. Boom. This is a box that I've mentioned in one of my videos that I enjoy the display of it, where the watch is laid flat on its side. And it's a good way to just have the watch sit on your, bedstand or anywhere on a desk, and you can just look at it as it's an art piece. So I kind of like this watch box for this watch. Now I'm gonna take it out and talk to you guys a little bit more about this piece. So as I mentioned, it's Datejust 16013, fluted bezel, gold, 18 karat gold throughout the bracelet. This is the original bracelet that came with the watch. All the links, it's not missing a link. All the links are there. It's just on the second to last clasp extension. So once you extend it to this piece, to this hole, it will be the largest size. I don't know who has a wrist that size, but yeah, it'll fit. And with the clasp, the engraving Rolex. And what I like to look for when I look at pieces is to see whether or not the crown on the clasp or anywhere else, or the crown is well defined. Some watches, especially vintage watches, are sometimes over polished, and that's something to look for whenever looking at a piece. Even sometimes modern watches may be over polished or incorrectly polished, so that's something to look at always, the polish of a watch. This watch comes with the Acrylic Crystal. It's circa 1985, where the acrylic crystal is raised, as you guys can see from this side profile. And this is something that I enjoy. I really appreciate this vintage aesthetic where the acrylic is raised. So whenever you look at the watch from a certain angle, the way the light reflects is just different. That's all I can say. It's just different compared to some of these modern watches with the sapphire crystal. This watch comes with a silver dial. Now we all know Rolex Datejust watches come in multiple variations, not just of the metal, which can be all steel or all solid gold, 14 karat and 18 karat, but the dial color come in many variations and patterns. This one is a simple silver dial, which a lot of people can appreciate the simplicity of it. Also, it has a quick set date function, which means you wouldn't have to turn the crown 24 hours for the date to change from, let's say, 3 to 4. You can easily pull the crown out to a certain setting, that's a function, and easily change the date. And then once you pull the crown out to the furthest extent, you can actually change and adjust the time. One thing I've always said in my videos when I talk about these watches is that I wish that Rolex would have a display case back. Now, Rolex aren't known for having, let's say, beautifully designed movements in comparison to, let's say, Patek or Vacheron, but I do appreciate how the Rolex movements look. If I have a picture, I'll show the exact movement, how it looks for this watch. If you guys aren't into vintage watches, I beg you guys to actually give it a shot, give it a chance. Go to any watch shop and pick up a vintage watch, not just a vintage Rolex, but a vintage watch. Over time, it will grow on you and you'll appreciate even the modern watches today. I made a comment on a channel that shows a lot of watches and the dealings. And I said that I love vintage watches way more than the modern watches. And I think the video was really about how these watches are faked easily. So I was like, the modern watches are faked a lot. And today, some of them are so hard. There's super fakes, which are hard to identify. And I had made the comment again that with the vintage watches, they're easy to spot fakes, you know? So let's say you see me with this watch on my wrist out, you'll be able to know, hey, that's an 80s watch, a classic 80s Rolex Datejust, and at least from the outside, it's original. Of course, you wouldn't be able to tell by the movement that it's original, but at least from the outside, you can tell. With some of these modern watches, these super fakes, you can be fooled even as an expert if you don't open it or if you don't have a loop to take a really, really close look at the watch. Now, this watch has a Jubilee bracelet. It's a bracelet that's been growing ever more popular these days, even on sports models. The Jubilee bracelet was one that I loved always. I do like the Oyster bracelets, but the Jubilee bracelet, for some reason, it just hits different. It just gives me a different feel. Whether it's on a sports or a dress watch, I just prefer the Jubilee bracelet. It's just a comfortable fit. It just flows on the wrist way easier than a Oyster bracelet. And I've owned Oyster bracelets. I've owned a Submariner, a 16610, and yeah, the Jubilee bracelet is definitely my #1 pick. Now, let's get back to the crystal. Now, for you guys who don't know about the acrylic crystal is, you could say, plastic. So which means it's easy to scratch, but hard to actually shatter. You wouldn't be able to shatter it as though it was sapphire crystal, as though it's glass. And I appreciate that. I'm not knocking the sapphire crystal, but acrylic would be my first choice. And even some of the modern watches who try to give a vintage aesthetic use acrylic crystal at times. So you shouldn't think that acrylic crystal means the watch is old. Acrylic is just an option for watches.